Today, we're facing a reality that has become all too familiar with this administration: another government shutdown. As of today, the federal government has ground to halt. Hundreds of thousands of workers are either furloughed or working without pay. Services that millions rely on are disrupted, and the ripple effects are spreading quickly through communities and the economy. But beyond the headlines, there are real people and real consequences at stake. So the big questions are: how did we get here? What should we expect right now? And what happens next? Today, we'll break down these questions and more. So stay tuned. I'm Dan Rivera Jr., and you're watching Rights Watch. All right. So to help us unpack this today, I'm joined by President John Hetzel, President of AFG Local 1133, my good friend, my boss, my union rep. John, thank you so much again for being here, brother.
Danny, thank you. Thank you for continuing to carry the torch and get the message out to the people. This is one of the very few expansive shows that really goes into detail, right, about what's happening for government employees and unions right now. So we applaud you for carrying that flag. It's always a pleasure to be with you on the program.
Thank you, John. Thanks again for being here and for keep the job, keeping working for the people, keeping us safe on the workplace as you do. So I know we're facing some challenges, John, and today we're facing a shutdown of our government. It's sad. It's a sad day for our fellow government employees. It's a sad day for our country. But before we get into that, there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and we want to start by touching on this subject. And we're going to start by talking about the good news that came out from a judge that blocked Trump's anti-union executive orders. So if you can go ahead, John, and talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll go
Yeah,
on for the shutdown.
thank you, Danny. I thought it was really important because, so much today and within the past year, right? A lot of the news has been really negative, and people that can really weigh on people and their psyche and their emotions and their health. And so I think it's always important to accentuate the positive, and when something happens, it's good. This is very important. This is about a judge, like you said, blocking Trump's anti-union executive order, right? Which came out, and this is specifically for the IFPTE, and I'll kind of explain what that is briefly. And I only want to talk about this for a minute because we do have to talk about the government shutdown, right? But there's a couple important things to note here, right? This is a U.S. District Judge out of Washington, and his name is Judge Paul Friedman. And if you ever meet him on the street, buy him a beer, buy him a coffee, tell this guy he's a good guy, because there's too many people that are afraid right now to stand up and do what's right. But Judge Freeman actually said that President Trump has clearly exceeded his authority when he issued an edict, the executive order, stripping two-thirds of the federal workforce of its collective bargaining rights. This is huge, folks. The judge is saying that the president exceeded his authority. The union that I'm speaking of is the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers across government.
Good. I got it pulled up here for whoever wants to have a quick glance at it from the government executive.
Thank you, Danny. And I think what the judge said, right, and he issued an edict from the bench, which is unusual. And that edict was that those contracts for these unions that group sister unions that filed together, and keep in mind this is not AFGE, but I'll explain why it's important. Basically, their contracts are back in play. brothers and sisters. And I've been saying it was an illegal act and that the contracts would come back into play. I didn't know the date or the time, but it would be back in play. But what's very important that Judge Friedman said here is, and I'm quoting him, so you have retaliation, you've got union animus, and you've got favoring some unions and not others. It's clearly ultra vires, Friedman said, referring to the legal term for when a president has overstepped their authority. It is clearly that, the judge went on to say. That's in their fact sheet. It's in the OPM guidance. Just reading those demonstrate how the plaintiffs in this case have been irreparably harmed. That's huge, guys. And he basically rejected the arguments, um, right, that the other side brought in. Now, you're saying that's great, John. That's great for that union and the sister unions, which also envelop teachers, overseas teachers, metal workers, other um, trades. But you say, why is that important? That's important because that is a federal judge saying the president has exceeded their authority and performed an illegal act, which AFG has said. And it is, I believe, going to set a precedent for our case that is before the nine judge panel, AFGE, and other sister unions that had a hearing yesterday. And I think that, again, this is a judge that is rooted in doing what is right and clearly has seen through the sham, right, that the agency is putting forward, that we were a security risk or you know whatever reason they decided on stripping of us of our rights. But it's a win. We should consider it a win, and hopefully again it will be somewhat precedent setting, right, for things to come. uh,
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
again, we want to accentuate that. One other thing, Danny, in just a sentence, right? Our viewership may not know. Immediately yesterday, AFGE filed a lawsuit. It is the second lawsuit since the Trump administration has taken over. This lawsuit specifically deals with the fact that Office of Budget Management and Director Vogt. I haven't come up with a clever name for him yet, so I'll just call him that. Now, maybe I'll call him Dr. Evil. How about that? Who is one of the architects of Project 2025, which has now been modified and running the Office of Budget Management. With a wave of Trump's magic wand, right, Dr. Evil has now instructed the agencies to prepare to start removing employees, not just furloughing them, but firing them, Danny, and going around a RIF process or any other legitimate process there is for a true reduction. And so immediately, which doesn't happen very often with AFGE, they swung to hit that ball to center field and filed a lawsuit in federal court saying this is illegal, just like you overturning our contract, and you will stop. And I like that they did it that quick, right? So hopefully damage can be minimal, right? If a judge gets to it and agrees with AFGE. But please, brothers and sisters, because we're hearing a lot lately that AFGE or other unions, oh, what can they do? They're not doing anything. Where's our money going to? It's going to stuff like this. Lawsuits are not cheap, brothers and sisters, and they hired a high class Washington, D.C. law firm to represent you. This is not slouches, right, that are going to go to trial if they have to over the illegal actions of the White House and this administration. So I thought it was important, Dan, to take a minute to state both of those positive things, in a sea of, it seems like, swimming in a sea of negativity.
Yeah, it's good, and thank you, John, for bringing these good news during these troublesome times. We really need good news, and I think we're heading to we're stepping in the right direction, certainly, and I think we're just going to keep going, moving on forward as things progress. I think I have a little bit of faith on the system, and I think that eventually justice will be done, and we'll get all of our rights back. We're continuing fighting for it, and we will get it. So thank you so much for bringing light on that. Now, unfortunately, we have to get to the bad news portion of the show because of this current shutdown. A majority of our viewers work for our government. Um, Government workers are, our government's been shut down. Many people um, are right now not being able to work, are working without any compensation at the moment. John, can you walk us through exactly what's happening? Which agencies are being shut down, and what's going on?
Sure, Danny. Let me preface by saying this is my third government shutdown that I've experienced in my tenure with the government. It's the 21st shutdown of the government, as I understand it. Most of the times the government has shut down has been for a very minimal amount of time that it's happened. Significant ones that happened were actually in my lifetime, right? The first one was in 1996 with Bill Clinton and basically shutting down Newt Gingrich as Speaker of the House, a Republican at the time. And that was a bad one, Danny. And a lot of people weren't around for that one. And the reason I say that it was a bad one was we weren't protected at that time as government employees. There was nothing in the law, right, that said that we had to get paid.
Right,
That was a very scary time. And it was so scary, in fact, and it lasted for an extended period of time that the union actually, I wasn't president at that time, but the former president actually gave a $50, and this is in the mid 90s. So $50 was a week's worth of groceries. Gave everybody in there was a union member a $50 card to Kroger to be able to buy food and necessities. And at that time, we had a more caring agency that we worked for. We partnered with them, even at that time, believe it or not, to have a food pantry that employees could come in and get resources that were donated to be able to have meals for their families and that while they weren't receiving a paycheck. And again, there was no guarantee that they were even going to get paid at that point. The second shutdown in my career, and maybe in a lot of people's career, was the last time that Trump was in office. And I think that was the longest shutdown of 35 days, right? And it affected a lot of services. There's a doctor that is a congressman that wrote a really cool thing. If we got time, I'll share it with you today, talking about that time, 2018, 2019, right? How it affected the government shutdown, affected services, and people need to remember that. Okay. And then, of course, again, under President Trump, uh, this shutdown. And I want to say this, Danny, because I say it like it is. You know, a lot of people think I lean one way or the other, and I lean the way of the workers and the employees. That's the way I
right,
lean. And here's what I'm
yeah,
going to say about this government shutdown. Right? Shame on the Congress.
yeah,
Not shame. Not shame on the Republicans. Not shame on the Democrats. Shame on the Congress.
yeah,
Right? You got very little you actually have to do, get
right,
done. And this is one of them, right? And to cause this undue stress and anxiety upon the very workers that lay the foundation for this country and the services this country provides and enjoys as citizens is outrageous. And every single one of you should be contacting your congresspeople, your senators, and say, shame on you, shame on you. If you're not doing the right thing, if your name isn't in the right column, then shame on you,
yeah.
right?
And sadly, John, we're dealing with an administration that just likes to place blame and doesn't take accountability for anything that they do. And right now, we're just seeing that this administration is playing games with people. They're playing with the livelihoods of people, and they're playing with the safety of our government and the safety of our country. And instead of getting together and being united, they're just playing games where they're blaming one side or the other. We have a majority Republican led government, um, and then they go ahead and they start trying to blame the Democrats for not wanting to concede some of their the things that they want passed, and then we see Democrats going back and trying to defend themselves, and at the end of the day, all these games, they're costing people their livelihoods, and government shouldn't be our jobs shouldn't be part of a bargaining chip. And John, what do you think? I have my own thoughts about this, John, and but um, are we being used as bargaining chips? I mean, at the end of the day, and I'm gonna get ahead of the conversation a little bit, but there is light at the end of the tunnel because employees under the law, like you stated before, we're guaranteed paid at the end of the government shutdown. So why a shutdown to begin with?
Well, because not everybody's guaranteed pay. Okay, we and it's kind of complicated, right?
Yeah,
But it's about a differentiation between essential personnel and non-essential personnel. And when we talk about what's going to be open, what's not going to be open, that this is kind of where this comes into play, right? Non-essential personnel can be furloughed. Okay, and furlough can be without pay. Okay, and I'm not trying to be nefarious or anything, but if we're following what the direction of OBM and why AFG filed a lawsuit, right? It could go further than that, and it could cost people their jobs. You asked, do I think that our employees or government employees, what did you say, pawns in it, or are they being
yeah,
used as pawns?
exactly.
Yes.
We're at the end
Yes.
of the day, we're all being used as political pawns to.
Yes. And that's not the way it's supposed to be, Danny. We both know that. Okay. And really, it's insufferable and intolerable for the government to shut down ever at any point. Right? Because I mean, fundamentally, think about it. Think about how it looks across the world, right? That we can't even get our proverbial stuff together enough, right, to even do a continuing resolution, even for a couple of months to get us through the holidays or whatever. We can't even do that, right? As
Right.
a
So
country,
so does this affect the way that other countries look at the United States,
yes,
because it makes us look weaker?
okay, it absolutely does. And then so we go, so the world goes too. So keep an eye on the stock market, on your retirement, on your, IRAs, on all that stuff, because the uncertainty is not good for stability in business or in finances or in relations. It's not good for stability. Okay, I'm going to go back to what you just asked, Danny, because we kind of got away from the question,
Yeah.
because I want to make sure people understand. So let's talk about who's going to be safe from a shutdown, and I
Yes.
use that word very loosely, safe, right? Because we need to talk about that. Even the ones that we're claiming are safe, but those are like individual agencies that are already pre-funded, right? The VA being one of those. So a couple of things would not be impacted, right? Social Security. Well, I get. Let's say this: receiving a Social Security benefit should not be affected. Where if you'll get your benefit, okay? Medicare and Medicaid payments, those should not be affected because again, they're pre-approved through Congress with funding. Also, VA benefits will continue, but we'll break that down and talk a little bit more about that because not all VA benefits will continue because not all VA employees are considered essential personnel, like we were talking about. But insofar as hospitals being open, clinic appointments happening, things like that, yes, the VA will uh, uh, continue. But it's my understanding that there will be furloughs even within VA. They could be up to 17%. Again, it depends if a job is deemed essential or not. And the Postal Service will operate as normal. And really, the reason for that, so you get mail and all that, the reason for that is Postal Service, believe it or not, doesn't really run off our tax dollars. It runs off the revenue that it generates itself by mailings and packages and different things. So it's kind of a different bird, right? But those are the major ones um, that they're claiming will be minimally affected. And again, I can't talk. We can't talk about all of them, Danny, and we're certainly not in a position to be experts on other things. But we can talk more about the VA, right? And uh, what that means. Um, Not just for our local viewers, right, in Louisville and the viewers of 1133. Believe it or not, the Corps of Engineers is exempt for this and will continue to build your new VA hospital and get paid, even though the employees at the current hospital may be working and not getting paid. And other government. So there you go. And there's your government working at its finest, right? They will continue to build uh, uh,
The new hospital,
that
the
new
construction.
hospital.
Yeah.
Good,
And
goodness
yeah.
gracious. But let's talk, Danny, if we can, for 1 second, because I don't want people to be under a false illusion, right? That
Yes. Yes.
VA is okay, okay, because it's pre-funded. Um, so agencies are going to be affected and negatively affected by what happens here. Okay. And including Department of Veterans Affairs. Okay. Because, like we said, benefits checks, VA care, medical appointments won't be interrupted. However, right. Uh, Phone support services for veterans and VA, including things like the GI Bill hotline, um, regional VA benefits offices will be closed. Public affairs outreach to a lot of communities that are in desperate need will end. Career counseling for employees and transition assistance programs are also halted with the government uh, stopping. Our brothers and sisters at VA cemeteries, burials will continue because they don't want the general public to rise up and attack right now. However, the department workers at the VA Department of Cemeteries will not be able to place headstones or maintain grave sites or the grounds at those cemeteries under. So can you imagine your loved ones are at Zachary Taylor Cemetery, and they can't even get the weeds out from the tombstone, or God forbid the veteran, next veteran that passes and is buried, they're not going to put a headstone on there. Well, why? Because Congress and the White House can't agree to get over their minuscule squabbles. All right, so to say it's not going to affect, and everything has cause and effect, and understand other departments, right? People we rely on other departments. VA
Yes.
does for things.
Yes.
Example, our paycheck. Our
Yes.
paycheck
That.
doesn't come from VA anymore. It comes
Yep.
from DFAS,
Right.
right? So if we don't know how many people are being furloughed at DFAS or what's being considered essential personnel, but could that be a delay in checks being processed, even if somebody is pre-funded? The answer is yes. Okay, so
Correct.
services. So understand, veterans, that your services are going to be affected by
one
this.
way or the other.
Correct.
And also I think, you know, and I think I mentioned earlier today, not here, but that some essential services might be affected. And by that I mean things like pay, like Social Security. We might, although you know people might be getting checks, there's no guarantee that they'll get those in time because it's going to affect the people that are processing the payments to being able to get those out to our recipients.
Correct. And a lot of departments, so many departments, Danny, are dependent upon other departments to fully be able to run and to their full capability. And if that can't happen, right, it puts a delay in the system, and it throws a wrench in the cog, so to speak. And nothing could come from that, but um, issues.
Yes.
And we're not 100% yet about furloughs, but I can give you some uh, statistics according to CBS News and the British Broadcasting Company. Right, Department of Defense is talking about 334,000 furloughs, and they would retain 406. Man, that's half of the Department of Defense, right? That potentially could be furloughed without pay, or according to OBM and the White House, maybe without a job, right?
Yeah.
Department of Health, 32,460 furloughs, 47,000 retained. Again, you're talking about almost cutting something in half or more, right? Department of Commerce, 34,711 to be furloughed, 8,000 to be retained. Yeah, you heard me right. 34,000 in the Department of Commerce. And we're talking about business. I'm not a businessman. I run a business, a non for profit, but that's business, brother, that we're talking about. Department of State, 16,651 are going to be furloughed, 10,000 retained, so more than 50%. NASA, 15,094 furloughed, 3,000 retained. We've got a problem, brother. And let me mention something else very quickly. Our brothers and sisters at TSA, right? They're going to be working, right? Maybe without getting a paycheck, until after the government shutdown is done, like other people. But they're human beings just like us. And we found out in the 1819 uh, thing, even though we can't strike, Danny, and we know that's a no-no and against everything that it's against our code, it's against our federation and our bylaws, that we as federal employees we cannot strike, right? However, when employees become so demoralized and downtrodden and degraded, right, that it affects their health, guess what they do? They start not coming to work. It
Right.
makes them sick. Sick leave usage goes up. That happened during the last government shutdown. And guess what? The people not there to do those jobs. The lines are going to start piling up, aren't they, brother? We know we fly. The lines are going to pile up, Danny, of people getting through TSA because you have to have the workers there to do it. So don't think that because this people are going to be working right at certain areas that everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Because
Even their train of thoughts. It's not, you know, you might have that one TSA worker that's so committed that he's still going to work, but on the back of his mind, he's thinking, you know, am I going to be able to pay rent this month? Am I going to be able to buy some food this month? Am I going to be able to sustain my family? Because I don't even know if I'm gonna receive a paycheck enough. I think the last government shutdown we had back in 2019 was 34 months, 30 something months, not months, I'm sorry, days,
35
30,
days, I think it was.
35 days,
Yeah.
35 days, I'm sorry. And, you know, that's a whole month. That's a whole month where you're waiting to receive a paycheck that you've got bills to pay, you've got a family to feed. And we have a lot of people that live paycheck to paycheck, John, and that our government's just not thinking about those people. And that's why I said they're using them as pawns at the moment, the livelihoods of people and those TSA workers. So then it places the general public at risk because you don't have somebody. that's totally thinking about the job that they're doing, and they're worried about what's going to happen at home. So
Danny, they're
there's
worried
more.
whether they're going to have whether they're going to be able to make their car payment and their insurance, so
Yeah.
they even have a vehicle to get to work, right?
Yeah.
When and if they're going to get a paycheck. Let's be honest, and we've talked about this before on this show. Most government employees, most are living paycheck to paycheck. Brother, I would say
Yes.
most people in this country, except for the elite, are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
There, but for the grace of God, go us, because anybody could be within 1 month of being what you just said, being out of their house, being not having a vehicle, not being able to provide diapers or food for babies. Is this really worth? Is the price really worth the small squabbles that are having between the White House and Congress? Is this kind of um, you know it's
And
terroristic. It's
yeah.
terroristic, Danny. And I'll say that's a strong word, but I think that when people are in fear, and you're absolutely right. We've talked before. People are not going to give 100%. People's minds not going to be on the job. Do you want your TSA agent's mind not to be on the job when they're checking that bag for bombs or any other illegal thing? Do you want them 100%? Do you want your doctor or your nurse, Danny, 100%? Well, as a veteran, when I go into VA, I want my care to be 100%. I want my doctor to feel good, my nurse to feel good about
Yeah.
working there, and then not be worried if how they're going to make their house note, or that Christmas and the holidays are coming up and we're looking at this. And guess what, brothers and sisters? We have very short selective memories, but this happened exactly at the holidays the last time this administration was in, and we're suffering, not only suffering, but suffering during the holidays, which I think just adds to um, insult to injury, because people already worry about it. Now they're worried about, are they going to get time off with their loved ones, and that because contracts aren't in play. Now they got the additional worry of, am I going to get a paycheck, or am I just going to have to show up to work and imaginary get paid until it's all said and done? And let me say one thing about this, and I'm ranting a little bit, and you can take this part out and use it as one of your little blurbs if you want to. But I'm sick and tired of hearing a certain side say, I don't know what the government employees are getting so excited about. They passed a law the last time Trump was in place to ensure that, as we said in the beginning, the government employees get paid, even if they're not getting paid on time for the work that they do, because prior to that, it didn't even exist. And that seems insane to me that it didn't, but it didn't. Now we're protected, and they're saying, oh, well, you got the law changed, you're protected, you're going to get your pay eventually.
Mm.
Discounting, Danny, everything we have just talked about in the last 5 minutes about people having to pay their house bill, their grocery bill. We have employees that live by sometimes no choice of their own, 40 or
Hmm.
50 miles from the VA. And they're
Right.
thinking, how am I even going to be able to put gas in my car and get back?
Exactly.
Should people have to do that, that are providing a service um,
And not
to
only
us as
that as
citizens?
well, but there's always a concern for, also you're paying extra taxes on those paychecks, which means that ultimately when you get back pay, you're going to get less money than you would have originally gotten, because it gets if it gets taxed at a higher tax bracket. So there's a lot of implications, not just because well, firstly, we've established that not everybody may get paid afterwards, unfortunately. And then the second portion of it, those that will eventually get paid, they might not get the full amount that they've been that they should have been paid in the first place because of taxes. So it's so detrimental for the American people, for government employees. We've talked about the demoralization of government employees in our federal system, which is um, it's crazy because uh, I think there has been and I'm going to get a little bit off topic, but we'll get back to it, John. There has been kind of like a dehumanization of government workers, in our society. And there's this thought process that people go through that say, well, I pay taxes, I pay your salary, you're my
Mm,
employee.
mm,
And it's so demoralizing because we're dehumanizing our federal employees, and we have to realize they are people too, right? Whenever we go out to shopping, when we go to Walmart, we go shopping at Walmart, those people are getting paid by the money that I'm buying groceries off from or whatever. So they're getting paid off what I'm buying from. Whatever services you get out of any place, those people are getting, and you're all the people that work, you're getting paid from services that you render, right? It doesn't mean that we need to dehumanize people because they get a source of revenue from, because eventually you get a source of revenue from somewhere, and really shouldn't, as a society, we shouldn't dehumanize people for working on the government. If anything, we should praise our government workers because they go through so much. They're some of the least or lowest paying jobs out there is in the government, and these are people that are not only getting paid the least, but they are scrutinized at a higher level that you would in the private sector in any of these jobs. So you've got high levels of stress, you've got high levels of, you have a lot of discrimination that goes on in the background. There's a lot of nepotism that goes on in the background. And this is why we're always talking about the importance of unions, especially in our in the federal government, because there's a lot of injustices that go on the federal system, and then this happens, right? So we have to go back to being uh, good human beings, good Americans, and support our federal employees, our government workers, because at the end of the day, they are people. They have families to feed, and we want to dehumanize them, but then all of a sudden we don't get uh, one of the government services that we need, and then we complain. Then let's just support our government in the first place. Let's make sure that we all deserve equal treatment, fair and equal treatment. So I know I went on a
No,
rant
that's
about
all
that,
right. That's
John,
good,
but
brother. 100%. I'm with you. And I do want to make a note, right, for people because, we primarily talk about government employees because, that's what we do and that. But let's just talk just for a second briefly, right, about how this affects us as citizens, right? Not even as government employees. How does the government, and we've already talked about some of those ways, right? Services can be delayed, right? Ancillary staff that normally would process claims or answer calls or things like that at any department, right? That can change, and there can be delays. But for even bigger things, things like museums, humanities, and the arts. Danny, you and I have been to DC, on numerous occasions. I love going to DC. I love our Smithsonian museums in DC, and I love the fact that there's still some of the only museums in the country that are free to attend. Guess what? You're not going to be able to do that while the government is shut down. Those schools, the people that take kids there come from, foreign countries every day, then the tens of thousands. Nope, those will be shut down. Art galleries, museums, things like that, because they are considered non-essential services, right? They're not in the public interest or the public safety. They are in the public interest, but they're not in the public safety and warrant, it to be open. So believe me, your national parks are going to be the same way. While some of those national parks may be open, you may not have national park rangers or people to take out the garbage or clean the bathrooms or maintain those grounds, just like we were talking about, right, with the veteran cemetery thing. Danny, if you'll indulge me real quick, okay, and this is my last real thing I mentioned earlier, because I think this will illustrate to people about the danger, not just for us as government employees, right? When and you so eloquently stated that government employees have suffered the 1-2 punch, right, of the illegal removal of our collective bargaining and our rights. And now the fact that they've shut the government down, people are uncertain whether they're going to get paid, when they're going to get paid, right? Or even worse, whether they're going to have a position left to go to. But I think the general public needs to understand still how this affects them and where it goes. So I mentioned
Yes.
earlier in the thing, and this is very brief, but we have a congressman by the name of Ami Bera. He's a medical doctor, and he's a congressman. And I'm just going to read this verbatim, and I don't normally do that, but I think it summarizes in just one little small paragraph, right? Really, the detriment to us as Americans and citizens by doing this. Okay, and we spent this whole time, talking about government employees and that's great. But Dr. Barra says this: a government shutdown, whether partial or full, imposes a variety or impacts a variety of services and programs. During the 2018 and 19 shutdown, the Food and Drug Administration suspended routine inspections, increasing public health risks. The National Park Services stopped trash collection, like we were just talking about, and road repairs, creating unsanitary conditions and unsafe roads. And again, some national parks and most museums and some arts institutions closed entirely. Additionally, and we haven't talked about this, over 86,000 immigration court hearings were canceled, exacerbating existing backlogs. The shutdown also threatened the temporary assistance for needy families and children at risk. These disruptions illustrate how shutdowns can detrimentally affect public service and society's most vulnerable members. Thank you, Dr. Barrow. We have to remember that, and I challenge the rest of the Congress to remember that, right?
Yes.
That as citizens, Danny, we deserve more than this. We deserve more than the minimal, which is to keep our government open and operating. And I think we've illustrated in this conversation why that is so important, not only for us as government employees, employees that we represent, but for the United States of America, for how we look at the rest of the world and how the rest of the world goes. This is critical, and this is a bold statement, and that statement is the United States of America cannot do the basic necessity of ensuring we stay open and keep running. That's sad, Danny. And I
Yeah.
think I think we can do better than that.
Yeah, we can. And here's a word we know way too well in the union world: bad management. When you have a president who can't get stuff done, even within his own people, that's bad management. When you have somebody in power that can't unite his people and can't agree, I mean, these people don't want to concede on anything, John. When you rely on force rather than leadership, that's bad leadership. That's not a leader. And this is what we're facing, unfortunately, and our government police are paying the price for it. And ultimately, the American people are paying the ultimate price for it when we start losing services. And before we end, John, I want to address the elephant in the room per se. That Because President Trump had um, directed agencies to be prepared for permanent layoffs during the potential shutdown,
Yes.
John. So,
Yeah, we were talking
um,
about that earlier. That's along with Director Vote, Evil Ed, and yes, Danny, and that's as scary as anything else. And when you're talking about the psychological um, uh, uh, being psychologically unsafe, right? About pay and about that. Well, now you've compounded that times 10 because people are not wondering just are am I going to get paid or when am I going to get paid? And keep in mind a lot of these people are going to be working, Danny, even though they may not get a paycheck. You said that earlier in it, and I think we've iterated that through the conversation. But some people will not get paid, and maybe until later, if they're furloughed, they may not get paid at all. But not only is that weighing over them, right, but also the fact that clearly the White House and the Office of Budget Management has directed, yes, utilize this shutdown as a time to identify individuals that are non-essential. We talked about that earlier, right? And if they're non-essential, why should they come back? Why should they be here? And it's again a way to go around proper procedures, right? Like a reduction in force that's addressed in the law and in our contract and other things, that
Yeah.
the government can legitimately do.
It's
So,
another shortcut. It's
correct.
another shortcut they're taking to try to identify, like you said, non-essential people, people that they believe they don't need in the government, and fire them. And John, you may I may need to have Andrew at some point to talk about this as well. But um, does the government have some kind of authority or to be able to fire employees or direct the firing of employees
It's a good
during this
question, Danny. I
for
mean, I
that?
mean, it's one that can't easily be answered, and not can't quickly be answered, because they are ignoring so many aspects of what is right and wrong. And right now, with the absence of the with the contract being in the gray area right now, I'm going to say that kind of all bets are off right until, because we're very limited right now. You know, can we trust them to do the right thing? No, I don't think so. I think clearly it's been established that we can't, even when the system of checks and balances is in place, Danny, and functioning fully as it should be, they still don't operate all the time. You and I both know that above board in the way that they should. So certainly, when I told somebody today, when the leash is taken off, the dog runs free. Believe that the dogs will take off and run like a wild person. And when they feel like that they're have no restraint and they're emboldened to do what they're going to do, does it really matter, right? If it's legal, if it's right, if it's wrong, if it's morally right, morally wrong, do those things really matter? And you kind of talked about that earlier in the podcast, right? About the feelings and that. I mean, I don't think it. I think it's beyond whether it's right, wrong, whether it's legal or not, whether it's by contract or not. I think it's an attitude, right now, that we can do whatever we want, and it doesn't matter who we harm or that. And that's very dangerous, Danny, because being a medical professional, right? And we're certainly not, in the mental health field or anything like that, but it certainly lacks a certain empathy, sympathy, and emotional, a component. When you can be as cold, callous, and calculating as they are right now, with apparent indifference to people's emotions, feelings, their families, how their families feel. How do you think, how would somebody's wife feel about it? How would your wife feel about it with, two daughters and a daughter on the way? Whether Danny's going to get a paycheck or it's going to be delayed a month. How did all over this country, people are
Yeah.
wondering this right now. And if I'm furloughed, will I even have a job to return to? It's outrageous. I'm gonna say this, Danny, and I'm gonna leave it be because I know we're chit chatting a lot. But I'm going to say this to the people, brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter if you are a government employee. Doesn't matter if you're a veteran. Doesn't matter if it matters if you're an American. Okay, just like what I said earlier, right? And this should, as an American, this should outrage you. right? That the things that can go that are going on, and that they can shut the government down and affect services that are going to affect all of us, every single one of us, in some manner. It will affect you. Whether it's a delay, whether it's you not getting paid, whether it's you being furloughed, whether it's being you losing your job, it will affect you. And every single one of you should be outraged. You should contact your Congress people, your senators, the White House, and say, this is intolerable. This will not be tolerated. As American people, we are saying, stop it, pull your bootstraps up. You get paid a load of money. Sorry, Danny, but they do, right? To do a minuscule job, get the job done. Hold them accountable. Hold the White House accountable, hold VOT and OPM and OBM, and they got a good name, OBM. That's appropriate, because that's about what they're worth, the BM. But you know what, Danny? People have to stand up. They have to speak out, and they have to fight. They can't just do this at a local level or at your facility level. This has to be done to the Congress. Congress shuts you down, and the White
Yeah.
House. Remember that.
Yeah.
And guess what? We can change it.
We can. Don't be gaslighted by this government into thinking that somehow it's your fault. Somehow it's a partisan issue. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, we're dealing with people, and we have to keep that in mind. We have to keep in mind that we're all in this together. If one of us gets affected, all of us will get affected one way or the other. So, John, thank you so much for bringing that message of unity at the end, and for breaking all of this down for us.
A
I'm sorry
pleasure,
for
Danny. Always a pleasure to be here. I'm still hoping that one day, in the near future, we'll be able to get together and talk about, more uplifting things like the history of the union, and more positive things. It's just unfortunate right now that a lot of the information that we have to pass is, not the most palatable, right? To people right now, certainly not to government employees, to people that rely on them for their services, and even I was saying at the end, even to us as Americans. And I think I love that line. I think you should coin that, right? This is not about partisanism; it's about people. That's a great line. This shouldn't be partisan. It should be about people. That is a 100% true, Danny. And if everybody thought that way, and we just stopped and thought that way, I think we'd get on a different road, a different path. And we'd say, if we truly realized how we're being treated right now, if you were treated that way in a relationship that you had or whatever, you'd say, oh no, to hell with this. I'm out the door. I'm not going to be abused or treated that way. But we're allowing our government to treat us that way and abuse us. And we got to say, enough is enough. Anytime abuse is happening, you got to stand up and say, stop. And the way that we do that is by supporting the channel here. Press that like button, press that subscribe button, continue to watch these shows and this information. Go to your union meetings, listen to what people are telling you, contact your congressman and the White House and tell them stop abusing us as United States citizens. Thank you, Danny. Appreciate you. Carry that torch, brother. We appreciate everything that you do, man.
Thank you, John. Thank you, and we appreciate you. And yeah, we'll keep people updated, and we're gonna keep the fight running, John. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and for everybody that's watching. If you enjoy this content, if you find this information helpful, please make sure to subscribe, make sure to share, make sure to follow us on every single media outlet that we are utilizing to spread this message. It really helps us out. So, again, thank you everybody so much. Until the next show, take care. God bless. And remember, we are not giving up.